name is Zeena Dhalla, and a little bit about me. I am, well, first of all, I did graduate from Northwestern University here in the Chicago area in the United States. I'm not in the Chicago area. What I meant by that was in the United States in the Chicago area. And I'm certified in a myriad of certifications. So the most important of one, which for today's workshop is something called the YET.You Institute. It is a form of postural alignment therapy that I practice. So I will be doing some exercises, and a lot of the philosophies for today's workshop will come from the YET.You method, as well as a certified ergonomics assessment specialist as well. So today's workshop is going to be combined posture and ergonomics information. We're also going to be talking, well, let me tell you a little bit about me as well, where I'm an author of a book on Pilates and posture. And then finally, what I do for a living is exactly this. I love teaching workshops. It's my favorite part of my job. I'm also I also do posture alignment therapy, ergonomics assessments, and I offer a desk exercise program. And my major customer right now is Google. We do a lot of work for Google as well as Microsoft as well. So just a little bit about my company. My company is VerticAlign Posture and Ergonomics. So our mission as a company is to inspire office workers to decrease pain and increase productivity. And we do this through ergonomics and posture exercise programming. So I will spend like 2 minutes at the very end of today's workshop just talking a little bit more about what we do as a company. But this is what we're going to be doing for the next 30 or 40 minutes or so. So we're going to talk about what exactly is ergonomics. And we're also going to talk about posture and why we should care about our posture. So I'm going to be combining both into today's presentation. We're going to deep dive into something called a posture deviation. I'm going to highlight the major posture deviations that happen at the workstation. That way we know how to address them when it comes to ergonomics. We will be doing some movements today because part of ergonomics is getting some movement into the workstation. I know that seems surprising. It's not yoga class. It's not CrossFit or anything like that. Don't worry. We're just going to be doing some micro movements that are going to help improve posture and, again, feed into the research behind ergonomics that is telling us about how we have to get movement in our workstation. We're going to talk about why standing solutions don't solve the posture problem alone, and we're going to also talk about exactly how to sit and stand at your desk, and I'm going to do a review on how to adjust your chair. I forgot to add that in there, but we will be doing that as well today. And like I mentioned, I'll just finish at the end a little bit about the solutions we offer here at VerticAlign. So if that sounds great, give me a thumbs up on your screen or thumbs up on the chat. This is interactive, so I want to make sure you're all listening and engaging and talking to me. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat. Also, if I encourage you to turn your camera on if you're listening to this live, because then I can see you when we get to the exercise portion. It's not required at all. It's just encouraged. Okay, so before I get to all that, though, I just want to bring up what I call my scary statistics slide. Okay, why are these topics important? Well, according to the global burden of disease, lower back pain is the leading cause of disability. And for every 100 people on a corporate team, okay, every person in a company, for every 100 people, 15 of them are going to take sick leave because of back pain. And 5 of those 15 people do not return to work within a month. That's a pretty staggering statistic. 15 people, 5 do not go back to work within a month, and that is because of pain. And obviously there's going to be an economic impact, which is reported here by OSHA, but really more important to those of you listening to the call is the link to productivity. So if you're already experiencing hand or neck or shoulder or arm symptoms at your workstation, you could be experiencing up to a 36% loss in productivity. Okay, that's 1/3 of your workday that's lost as a result of you being in pain. And that is, not a good thing. That's why ergonomists exist on the planet, to try to combat these issues. So the next question we have is, why is this happening? Why do these problems exist? Why are these numbers so high? Well, it's because our bodies were just not designed to do what it is we are asking our bodies to do. We were designed in human beings to hunt and gather and lift and pull and run and squat and hike. And what are we doing now? Sitting and standing and driving and texting and calling and typing and reading, right? Lots of stationary activities that has reduced our mobility, okay? And then I can show you some more statistics. This is after the pandemic, or since basically the beginning of the pandemic. These are studies that came from 2020 and 2021 based on home-based workers. So if you're working from home right now, these are showing an increase of neck pain and lower back pain at about 40%. So then the question is, why is it getting worse? Well, same reason, right? When we started working from home, or we were, our jobs may have gone from working from an office where we were walking around and having meetings and going to conference rooms to suddenly now you're going to virtual summits and you might be sitting for 8 hours straight, right? So we're clicking from meeting to meeting. The other factor is going to be poor ergonomic workstations. I went to a ergonomic assessment in someone's home on Monday. And this person had spent thousands of dollars buying a new chair, buying a new desk, and we walked in and we still had significant changes that we could make to the workstation because they're working in a silo at home, away from an office. It's really hard to know what to do. All right. So this is the reason why these numbers are getting worse. So that brings me to the topic of ergonomics. What does it even mean? What does that word even mean? Ergon means work, and nomics means law. So it is the law around how we work, right? It's the study of people's efficiency in their working environment. That's the true definition if you were to look it up in the dictionary. But at the end of the day, it's how we really should be working. So most of us, some of you on the call, because I know your alternative balance members might be teachers or instructors or coaches or something like that. So maybe you're not as confined to one space, but a lot of people in this world are confined to one space for their day job. That is not going to go anywhere. Regardless of how long you're working at that workstation or desk, we want to make it the best space possible. So today we're going to cover some snippets on how we can make this the best space possible and how we can really have good posture while we're working at our workstation. So just some last piece of statistics here. If you implement some of the tools from an ergonomics program, so some of the sitting, standing, and chair recommendations I'm going to give you today, we can reduce workers' compensation costs by 70%. We can reduce musculoskeletal disorders by 60% and work days by 88%. So lots of big numbers here, okay? And then if you happen to be a woman on this call, women tend to suffer more from ergonomic musculoskeletal disorders. I read this and I thought to myself, why? Well, it actually has to do with height and desk situation. So an average female, and again, this is the average, we absolutely can have males at this, but the average female is at about 5'4" in height, and the average desk is 29 inches tall. And if you are 5'4" at 29 inches tall or 29-inch desk, the chances are pretty high that your desk is a little too high for you. Now, we can adjust it as long as your chair can get you in the right position, but there are a lot of other ways that we can make adjustments to it. But most often people don't know or they're not aware that they're working at risk because of this chair height disparity, okay? So those are my last of my statistics. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about ergonomic interventions. So how can we address all of these issues, these musculoskeletal issues, these pain issues, productivity issues, economic issues? And there's really two ways that we can do it. One is changing the equipment. And I know before I came in today's workshop, there were some questions about back cushions and keyboards and mice, and I'm not going to be able to get to it all today, but I can definitely address questions when we get to the end. But changing equipment is the first thing people think of. My back is hurting, I need to change my chair. My wrists are hurting, I need to change my keyboard. And oftentimes that does work. It does help. But really what's more important, in my opinion, is going to be educating you and educating the people around how they should be set up. You could buy a $1,000 chair, have it set up incorrectly for your workstation, and still end up with a musculoskeletal disorder. So the equipment alone is not going to solve the problem, okay? So understanding how things should be set up and how you should be, again, moving and how your posture should be throughout your workday is going to be an important piece of that. All right, so this brings me to my favorite topic, posture. I'm a posture geek, self-proclaimed. So raise your hand. Feel free to use your Zoom hand or raise your hand if you ever look like this purple guy on this picture. If no one's raising their hand, I don't believe you because my hand is raised. My hand is raised. If you're ever slouching over this computer like this purple guy here, this is not a good thing, right? So this is called kyphosis. We're going to get into it more later. But the key here is to not be in this position for longer than 30 minutes at a time, all right? We don't want to be slouching for more than 30 minutes at a time because when we are, something called creep, all right, happens. And creep is defined as the progressive deformation. I'll say that again, progressive deforming. Your body is actually deforming. We don't want the body to deform. As a result, inflammation can occur, and then with that inflammation can create pain. There is that cyclical cycle we were just talking about with pain issues. So we got to get out of the slouchy position, okay? And that's a really important part of ergonomics is getting the body into good posture. All right, so I'm going to introduce you to my first favorite topic. It's called the active posture break actually I already introduced you to posture. So this is my second favorite topic, the active posture break. And that is the concept of taking movement breaks at your workstation. And if we're going to do this, okay, other practitioners will tell you, get up, walk around, go to the bathroom, whatever, go for a walk. Yes, great. Do all those things. But why not also do some exercises to help improve your posture at the same time? Why don't we do two things, kill two birds with one stone, right? So we might as well do what I call an active posture break. Now, this is supported by science. Cornell University is telling us we should be sitting for 20 minutes, standing for 8 minutes, and stretching every 30 minutes. All right, well, that's really hard to do, but I tell people if at least you get a posture break in once an hour, you're doing great. And again, the recent research that came out in 2021 is showing us that if we do this, we can decrease the onset of low back pain by 55 to 81%, and the reoccurrence between 65 and 78%. So if you already have had an episode of some sort of pain, this is going to be your secret to keeping it off, staving it off, and keeping it away. All right. So we're going to do one during today's little mini workshop. We're going to do actually 4 or 5 of little active posture breaks. Normally we'd spread them out every 30 to 60 minutes, but today we're going to do it every 5 minutes or so. So we're going to get started with one right now. I would encourage you to turn your camera on for this so I can see you, but it's not required at all. Just quickly, if I teach you an exercise today that doesn't feel good in your body, don't do it. Okay, listen to your body. You don't have to, no one's requiring you, no one's reaching through the camera, although I'm waiting for that technology to be invented where I can reach through the camera and correct people's postures. But we're going to go ahead and start with our first exercise today, and it's very simple. It's called a seated chest stretch. So move to the front of your chair, wherever you are. We're going to make sure our feet are firmly planted on the ground so we don't slip off our chair or have any ergonomic falls. You're going to grab onto the back of your chair here. And you're going to squeeze your shoulder blades together, keep your arms straight, kind of stick your chest out, and then you can bring your eyes up a little bit. Now, if this doesn't work for you, if your chair isn't conducive to this, or if you're standing, you can interlace your hands, or you can also grab a towel or a blanket or something between your hands, like so, and grab that and just bring the arms up behind you. We're going to hold this for about 30 seconds, so keep going. Try to keep your arms straight. Make sure you're breathing as you do this, so we don't want to pass out, right? So part of the beauty of getting your stretch breaks in is also taking a little bit of a breathing break, which is amazing for mental health and circulation and energy. Again, we were not, as human beings, designed to sit like this all day long. So these little breaks are life-changing, game-changing solutions to not only your posture, but also, like we said, mental health, circulation, physical health, cardiovascular health. All right, 5 more seconds. Keep those arms straight, really stick that chest out, and then come out of there and give me a thumbs up on the screen or on your chat box if you felt that stretch. Yes, Michelle felt it. Anybody else feel that stretch? Anybody else doing that stretch? Awesome. Okay, so, and these stretches, when you're doing the stretch, thank you, Gina, you want to hold it for about a minute. Okay, so just a little heads up on that. All right, moving on. Let's talk about exactly what is good posture. So that word is thrown around a lot. And oftentimes people think it's only that upper back slouchy position that I indicated before, right? The purple guy that we had a couple slides ago. But really posture is the whole body. And I just want to quickly go through it because it's going to be addressed with how we sit at our workstation. So this is important information to know. So when we're looking at somebody from the front, we want the hips, the knees, the ankles, and the shoulders all to be symmetrical on the same plane, okay? And we want the low joints stacked on top of each other. So shoulder over hip, over knee, over ankle. So nice stacking of the low joints here. And then we want the hands by the sides of the body with the palms facing the body. Okay, hands by the sides of the body with the palms facing the body. So this is really good front-facing posture. You'll see in subsequent pictures that this is really hard to achieve, believe it or not. And then when we're looking at the side angle, we want to make sure that we have something called the plumb line, okay, the plumb line. So what we do, like let's say I'm doing a posture alignment therapy session with somebody and they send me their pictures. I will take a line and I will put it at the ankle joint here. And then I will see where does the line fall on the body. And ideally that line goes through the knee, through the hip, through the shoulder, and through the ear. Okay, that's the ideal world of what we want. with the plumb line alignment here, okay? We tend to see a lot of dysfunction up here. We tend to see some dysfunction here, and I'm going to show you some pictures. But if you notice, we want to make sure we have a strong lumbar curvature, a strong glute development here, strong hamstring development, and again, that plumb line, also called the vertical load, if you've ever heard it called the vertical load. When our body looks like this, sitting and standing, all right, then we have the most efficiency in the body. The muscles can hold ourselves upright without a lot of work. It's when we fall out of this position and we get into something called a posture deviation, is that the pain and the inflammation occurs because suddenly the joints and the muscles are not prepared to hold the body in these awkward, strange positions, okay? So these is a list of posture deviations, and I teach a workshop entirely dedicated to this. But today we're going to highlight just a couple of them that are applicable to the workstation, all right? What I see the most when people are working at their workstation. So the first is kyphosis. We've already talked about this. It's that slouchy position where we have rounded shoulders and forward head. So let's look at that plumb line we were talking about. Okay, we can't see her feet, but let's assume her feet are right about here, right? So we're going to go up from the feet. We're going to go through the shoulder, and you can see we don't even come close to the ear. So we can tell that that head is forward, the shoulders are rounded, very common posture deviation. I see it about 95% of the time. You do not want to be me standing in a super mall or shopping mall, right? Because I'm watching people walk by all day long with kyphosis posture and my head's in my hands. So, so this is very, very common. And we're going to mitigate it in two ways. We're going to mitigate it by teaching you how to sit properly at your workstation, which I'm going to get to in a moment. But we're also going to mitigate it with some of the exercises and stretches that we're doing. You really have to do both. You cannot expect that just sitting posture alone is going to fix it. It is important to do the stretches and exercises to hold your body in the position. All right, second posture deviation I want to highlight is called a posterior pelvic tilt. So if you remember, we need to have a strong lumbar curvature and a strong glute development. This guy here doesn't really have that. So if I were to draw the plumb line, I'm not that great at drawing a straight line sometimes with a mouse, but we miss the knee here. We go through the hip and we entirely miss the shoulder and the ear, okay? It's not even close. His upper body is slouching, and it's as a result of the fact that his lumbar is not there, that his pelvis is kind of tucked underneath him a little bit. And you can see it here in the sitting position, and you can see what that could be doing to the vertebrae, right? So again, we're going to mitigate this in two ways. We're going to mitigate it with how we sit at our workstation, making sure we're sitting properly, and then also making sure we do some mobility exercises to get the pelvis moving versus that stuck stationary pelvis for sitting for hours at a time. We got to get the pelvis moving. It's actually probably one of the most important things that we can do for our body is get our pelvis moving. All right, finally, the shoulder disparity. All right, shoulder disparity. So you can see here, remember we talked about everything needing to be on the same plane and symmetrical? This is not on the same plane of symmetrical, right? Not at all. I see Michelle shaking her head. Yeah, not so much. You can see the fingers are off, the shoulders are off. You can see the shoulders coming forward. I also like to call this mousing shoulder. So, and mousing is a big contributor to this, especially if you single hand mouse like I do. I am one of the people that struggles with this a little bit. So again, we're going to mitigate it in two ways, making sure we're using the proper equipment and then also making sure we're doing exercises to improve that the scapular disparity or shoulder disparity. If we've got one arm that's tighter or weaker than the other, we want to get it stronger to get equal to the other side. And that's, again, usually coming from some of the single-handed work that we do at our workstation. Oh, sorry, one more deviation. This one has to do with the hips. It's a little hard to see in this picture here, but her pelvis is tilting forward here, whereas this side of the pelvis is not tilting forward. And then you can see the hips aren't even here, the hips aren't even here, shoulders aren't even. So we call this what, a pelvic and hip disparity. This is very common in people who drive a lot. If you drive a lot for a living, or you drive just in general in your life, or you commute to work, you're going to be party to this because we tend to use our right leg a lot more than our left when we drive for obvious reasons. Or if you have a sport that's asymmetrical, like you're a baseball player, or you might be a soccer player, or you might be a golfer, we tend to have one side that's stronger or weaker. And again, this can create pain in the body. So we're going to mitigate this and making sure, again, that we get that pelvic mobility that we need to get, and then also making sure that our workstation is not offset, that we're not spending our days twisting to one side as we look at our camera and talk on the phone or work at our desk or some things like that. So ergonomics does have a factor in these disparities as well. Okay, remember I promised you exercises every 5 minutes, so we're ready for the next one. Let's go ahead and scoot to the front of the chair. Again, you're going to place your feet down onto the ground. And if you're, I know a lot of you guys are not on camera, and that's totally fine. Just make sure you do the exercises with me because you want to learn by doing here. So we're going to keep our feet planted, bring our arms outside to a T position, squeeze our shoulder blades together behind us. Keeping that shoulder blade squeeze, we're going to circle the arms forward. I'm going to turn around so you can see my shoulder blade squeeze here, but these bones here are the shoulder blades, or otherwise known as the scapula. We can use those terms interchangeably. We're going to squeeze the scapula together and then keep that squeeze as we circle the arms forward, okay? That is the most important part of this. We want to try not to be up by our shoulders or ears, and we want to try to make sure we're not flaring the rib cage or jutting the head forward. Think about that plumb line we just talked about with the ear over the hip, over the knees, okay? Now, go ahead and pause there for a second. Turn your palms face up. Squeeze your shoulder blades together behind you again. Re-engage, and now circle those arms backwards. Yes, beautiful. And remember, these are ergonomic solutions. I know it seems weird that we're doing arm circles in the middle of an ergonomic class, but the science and the research is telling us that we need to be doing these movement breaks. So I'm going to teach you movement breaks that involve posture therapy and postural alignment, because why not do both at the same time? Let's do 10 more circles. Hopefully you're feeling this. Woo, make sure you're breathing. My arms are feeling it for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And come on out of there. Give me a thumbs up if you were able to feel that exercise in terms of your, yeah, exactly, back of your shoulders. You might feel the muscles between your shoulder blades, all that fun stuff. Okay. Now, next up, we are going to talk about how to sit at our desk. So I went through all of that posture alignment and deviation description so that you can know now how to apply that to your workstation. This is the #1 rule in ergonomics, is making sure we have good, not awkward posture. They call it all the time, the ergonomics call it, it's awkward posture, it's awkward posture. So we're looking to not have awkward posture. So we want to make sure the ear is over the shoulder, which is over the hip. Okay, we've already talked about that. It's called the plumb line, right? The big thing, though, that is new in this equation is making sure that the elbows are underneath the shoulders. I love it. I can see Michelle's adjusting her workstation, which is my favorite part of teaching these workshops, is please adjust your workstation. Turn on your camera, turn to the side, check your elbow angle, whatever you need to do. Please make these adjustments right now. This is the most important piece of information you're going to get on this workshop in terms of ergonomics, which is this elbow bend position and the position of the elbow underneath the shoulder. Because with this, if this is forward or this elbow is bent too much, if the wrist is higher than the elbow, that is going to put you at ergonomic risk for neck, shoulder, and wrist issues. All right. You can have your wrist slightly lower. So it says here 90 to 110 degrees, right? So this would be 90. 110 would be if the wrist was slightly lower. That's okay. But we do not want the wrist higher. We want to have a neutral wrist position. Very important. You can see I've got palm support here. We do not want contact stress on the wrist, so palm support here. And then you're only going to use your elbows on the armrest if the armrest can size correctly. And I will show you how to size it correctly in a moment here. This picture is deceiving. It's deceiving. It looks like my elbows are on the armrest. They are not on the armrest, all right? They're actually resting just inside of it because these armrests were a little too high for me. So if you see this right here, you can see it's a little bit higher. So if I put my forearms on it, my shoulders would be up by my ears. If you do not have a chair that can adjust the armrest properly, you're just not going to use it. You can take them off. It is not required to use armrest. All right, in terms of lower body. We talked about posterior pelvic tilt. We talked about neutral pelvis. We want to maintain that at our workstation. So we want to make sure we have a lumbar support. Very important. Hips at 90 to 120 degree angle. So your knees can be lower than the hips, okay? Lumbar support, really important. 2 inches of space from the back of the knee to the front of the chair, just to make sure you're not pushing up against the nerves in the back of the knee. Knees directly in front of the hips. So remember we talked about good posture, feet, toes, knees facing forward. If you sit with your knees wide all day long, not good. Your hip flexors are not going to get the work that they need, okay? So make sure you keep your feet facing forward, feet flat on the ground, toes facing forward, or if you're using a footstool, you need to make sure that that ankle joint is at a 90-degree angle, okay? Now, in terms of standing posture, if you happen to have a sit-stand solution, you want to make sure the ear is over the shoulder, which is over the hip, which is over the knee, which is over the ankle, just like we were talking. That is why that plumb line is a really important concept to understand. You want to maintain that. Same thing, elbow underneath the shoulder. It's a little bit easier in a standing position to find that elbow position. 90-degree angle, neutral wrist position, palm support, eyes facing forward, okay? All right, so now that you know this is your first pop quiz, I think your only pop quiz today, go ahead and type in the chat, tell me what is wrong with this picture. What am I doing wrong? Use the chat box. I'm gonna see if you're awake. It's your pop quiz. Are we all taking a nap or feeling shy today? There we go. Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. No lumbar support. That's correct. Anything else? Yep, Gina, thank you. The elbows are too high. What else is happening? Anyone know what the name of this would be called? Like what this position is in terms of the upper body? Rounded shoulders. Danielle, you got it. Kyphosis. Beautiful. Beautiful. Got it. You got it. That's enough. So this is called a reach. Reach. So as you can see, the desk is too far away, and I'm obviously exaggerating here for the sake of the picture, but there's a lot of people. In fact, this ergonomic assessment I did on Monday, she was reaching slightly. You should see her picture. Her shoulders are very rounded. Her head is super far forward, so it really accentuates that kyphotic posture. So making sure that your keyboard is close to you, that your elbows are underneath your shoulders, and that you can find that 90-degree angle is going to help us maintain that scapular retraction, which is that squeeze of the shoulder blades that we just did in that previous exercise with the arm circles, okay? So again, this ergonomic position is to help avoid the reach and really improve this posture. You can also see here that my pelvis is tucked underneath me. I don't have that lumbar support, as Michelle said. So, okay, got another exercise for you, so let's stand up for this one. I'm gonna have you grab onto the back of your chair or onto the desk, okay? Whatever works for you, works for me. You're gonna make sure your toes are facing directly forward, and I want you to watch me for a second. We're going to emphasize the rounding and arching of the lower back, okay? So this is all about pelvic mobility. Now, if you have tight hamstrings, you want to bend your knees when it comes to the arch, because the more you bend your knees, the more you're gonna be able to arch your back. If you keep your legs straight, it's hard to get that mobility. So don't be shy to bend your knees as you look up and arch the back, and then you can straighten your legs as you look down and look towards your knees and your feet. So this is all about pelvic mobilization. You'll feel the hamstring stretch. If you tend to have one of those deviations we talked about, the pelvic deviation where you have one side that's a little different than the other, this is a great exercise for it because it helps move the pelvis bilaterally. What that means is the pelvis is moving at the same time. So lots of really great work happening here, as well as hamstring stretching. Upper back stretching is happening here as well. So lots of benefits to this one stretch. You've probably done it on your hands and knees before, but now you can do it in a standing position and add that extra hamstring stretch. Let's do two more. Go ahead and keep going there, but two more of those rounding and arching. And we call this desk cats and dogs. And then you can come on out of there. And then again, give me a thumbs up if you felt that stretch, if you felt the hamstrings. And please, again, feel free to ask questions in the chat. If anything isn't feeling right, feel free to ask questions. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about, is your chair adjusted correctly? Okay. So I'm actually going to demonstrate on my chair. I'm going to keep this screen up so that you can see all the different adjustment points. I understand that you may be working on a chair that is a dining room chair or some sort of other chair, and you may not have 6 adjustment points. Not every chair has 6 adjustment. In fact, most of them only have 3, the basic 3. But I am going to go through all 6 adjustment points on my chair so that you can see, just in case you do have the adjustment point, how to adjust it, okay? What is the most important part of the adjustment process? So I'm going to start with height adjustment. So remember we talked about that 5'4" person and the 29" desk height and how oftentimes the desk is too high, right? Well, a very simple solution is going to be to raise the chair, right? So if I raise my chair up, I can get my elbow at the right angle. So the number one question I get is, how high does my chair or my desk need to be? It really entirely depends on your elbow angle. So you want to get to that 90-degree elbow angle where you can comfortably type and your elbow can be underneath your shoulder. So it's going to be different from person to person, obviously, right? If you cannot get your chair high enough, you're going to use a pad or a pillow underneath you to elevate you on your chair, okay? Or you're going to get a new chair. That's another solution as well, as we talked about. Sometimes getting new equipment is the solution. All right, so now here's the other problem, right? So I pushed myself up pretty high and suddenly my feet are no longer touching the ground properly. This is a much easier problem to fix than the elbow angle, okay? Because if your feet are dangling, you can put a footrest or yoga blocks or books, even really simple books, underneath your feet to solve that problem. So please know that the elbow angle is more important. This is an easier problem to fix. Okay, next up is going to be seat tilt. So this is seat tilt. I apologize, it's called back tilt. I like to get them confused. Back tilt. Most chairs have a back tilt adjustment. But here's what I see a lot of times, where the back is adjusted really far back, so then you see somebody sitting like this, right? Slouched over the computer, because it's not giving them the support they need. So I like to make sure that you've got your back tilt in a place where you can feel the tips of your scapula against the back of your chair, and that way you can work in that better upright posture or position, okay? So that's adjustment point number 2. Adjustment point number 3 is the seat tilt. Not every chair has this, but mine has this seat tilt ability. And this one kind of rocks. So if you're on a video call and you want to just take like a lounging break, you can do that. But for your regular typing, you don't want to be too far back because, again, you'll slouch. The thing about being too far forward is you just want to be mindful that you might slip off the chair. But a forward angle tilt often feels good for people who might have a little bit of low back tightness because it gives you a bigger, wider hip angle. There's a lot of geometry involved in ergonomics, all right? So as you can see with my knees lower than my hips, it's a wider hip angle. And this is also great for pregnant women, okay? Now, just be mindful, though, that you don't feel like you're going to slide off your chair. So it really is a personal preference. I feel like I'm going to slide in this position, so I'm going to move mine back just a teensy bit so it's more parallel to the ground, and this is what feels comfortable for me. Okay, so those are 3 adjustment points, tend to be very common ones. The next one is not very common. It's called a seat pan adjustment. Not a lot of chairs have it, and that's okay if you don't, but I'm just showing you in case you do. The adjustment point is to make sure that a majority of your thigh is supported by the chair and that you have a little bit of space from the back of the knee to the front of the chair, okay? All right, one of the most important adjustment points that not a lot of chairs have the way that I would like them to have is going to be lumbar support. So we talked about that posterior pelvis and that kyphosis and how important it is to have lumbar support. So in this particular chair, you can't, I know it's hard to see, but the protrusion, where it's most protruding, is right here, okay? So this would be considered the lumbar support. And this particular chair adjusts by going up and down, like so. So we're going to place that lumbar curvature right in the small of my lower back. So I'm going to guess, I'm going to sit down, and I actually guessed perfectly correct. I don't always guess correct, but we want to make sure that that lumbar support is right at the lower back so you can get your butt all the way back, have support in your lumbar, and have your scapula tips touching the back of the chair. All right, finally, arms. This is my biggest pet peeve about most chairs is they don't have a lot of arm support adjustment. Like I said, you don't need it, so you can get rid of it. I would rather you get rid of it than type it with a poor arm support position with your elbows too wide or anything like that. But this one has 3 adjustment points. It can go height, it can swivel, and it can go medial lateral, all right? So I'm gonna make sure that I've got my elbow underneath my shoulders. We don't wanna type with wide elbows, so elbows underneath our shoulder here, and that it's supporting the forearm when I'm typing, okay? So you can see here, I've got my forearm supported, 90-degree angle, palm support, typing, scapula tips. Perfect postural positioning. All right, now just keep in mind, even though I gave you all the perfect postural positioning, we don't want to sit like that for 8 hours a day. You still want to get your movement breaks in. You still want to get your, stand up and walk around. So I've got one final exercise for you here. It's going to be in a standing position. So let's go ahead and stand up. We are going to, I'm just grabbing my phone so I can set a timer for us. We're going to be holding this position for a minute. We're going to interlace our hands like so, okay? And we're going to stand with our feet in a parallel position. Let me move my chair so you can see me. This next exercise is a bit of an endurance exercise. So again, we'll be holding it for a minute. You have a couple options here. If you have neck and back pain, you're going to put your hands slightly in front of you to just modify the movement. If you want to try the full exercise, you're going to bring your hands all the way above you, bring your hips backwards above your heels, wiggle your toes, look up at your hands, and we're going to hold this position for a minute. And the reason why we're wiggling our toes, I've got the timer started. The reason why we're wiggling our toes is so we have our weight in our heels. And again, you want to make sure the hips are above the heels, not splaying forward like I'm demonstrating right now, but instead hips over the heels, weight in the heels, eyes looking up. So keep going, keep holding it. You've got about 40 seconds left. What we're doing in this exercise is we are working the whole back side of the body, upper back, mid back, lower back, hamstrings, calves, glutes. We are working the body in something called extension, which is the opposite of flexion. And flexion is a position that our body is in all the time when we're sitting hunched over a computer. So to do an exercise that moves the body into extension is going to be a really important movement to counterbalance what we're doing in the workday. You've got 10 seconds left. Try to keep your elbows straight, your shoulders down. Make sure you're breathing. Okay, don't hold that breath. You're almost there. Wiggle those toes, weight in the heels. 2, 1, and come on out of there. Nicely done. Give me a thumbs up if you felt that one. Woo! That one is definitely a feeler on that one. Yes, beautiful. Okay. Got my armrest too high. Couldn't reach for my mouse. Okay. Final little slide here, standing desks. Why standing desks don't solve the posture problem. So I love standing desks. Do not get me wrong. They're an amazing tool. If I could wish everybody in the universe to have a standing desk, I would give it to them because there's a lot of great things. You can solve immobility, some immobility issues there by going up and down on your standing desk. You can vary the position, make sure your elbow angle is in the right place, all that fun stuff. But you can see here, my shoulders are rounded at this position. I'm working on a laptop, never a great idea. So even though you have a standing desk, it doesn't necessarily solve the posture problem. You still have to make sure that your pelvis is in the right place, your shoulders are in the right place, and that you're standing properly. All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, Sally, great question. I'll actually answer the question right now, and then I'm going to go on to the posture and ergonomic solutions. So the research on standing and standing desks shows us that if you stand for more than 30 minutes at a time, it actually can increase back discomfort. Because keep in mind, the standing desk does increase mobility in that we're not just sitting all day long, but standing is still immobile. You're still not getting a lot of movement there. So the recommendation is 30 minutes of standing and then about 2 hours of sitting. 30 minutes of standing, 2 hours of sitting, right? So great question here. And then in terms of the stretch breaks, every 30 to 60 minutes. So in an ideal world, if you're going to start off, I would maybe start with taking a stretch break once an hour. Set your timer on your device in your room if you've got one of the Alexa or Google, because I have one in my room, or if you've got an Apple iWatch, or you can also download software. And every hour, take a stretch break, go to the bathroom, do some arm circles, do some exercises I taught you today. And then at that 2 hour break, if you have a sit-stand solution, stand for a little bit and then come back down and rinse and repeat that over and over again throughout your day. Okay, so it's important to set up timers and things like that. So great question. Keep the questions coming. I'm done with the content portion of today's workshop. I'm going to quickly just scroll through some of the programs we have at VerticAlign, and then I will absolutely answer any other questions. All right, so these are the solutions we offer at VerticAlign. Again, our goal, our mission as a company is to teach companies and corporations and individuals how to have good posture and how to have good ergonomics. So we do offer a virtual workshop similar to what I did taught today, where it deep dives into all the different posture deviations that we talked about, including the feet, the ankles, the knees, the hips. So if you have any pain problems, this is a virtual workshop designed for corporate teams. And then we also do posture classes for corporations where we teach on a variety of topics like uneven hips, uneven shoulders, and the feet. So it's meant to be continuing education. And then I do one-on-one posture alignment therapy. So if you're an individual on this call and you were intrigued by the posture information, know that you have posture issues, your posture issues go deeper than your ergonomic workstation, then I do one-on-one posture therapy where we get together on Zoom. We'll look at your pictures. We'll design an exercise program for you specific to your posture alignment, exercises beyond just desk exercises. I have 800 or some odd exercises in my head that we utilize. And then we meet once a week until we get rid of the pain and the posture problem. We also teach virtual ergonomics workshops for corporations where we go deeper into the wrist, elbow angle, and equipment solutions. So beyond just what we talked about today in terms of the chair. And then finally, we do individual ergonomic assessments where we'll meet with someone one-on-one. And as an individual, if you are interested in this, you can also take advantage of this. You get a discount as an alternative balance member where we'll discuss your ergonomics, look at pictures, and we'll actually make OSHA-based recommendation report. We'll write a report for you and talk about exactly what you should be buying, what you need, and then what exercises you need to be doing throughout the workday. Beautiful. All right. These are some testimonials of the our services. Like I said, our biggest customer to date is Google, pretty big customer. We also work with Microsoft, Deloitte and Touche, Baker Tilly, Red Bull, and a lot of other smaller companies work from home environments. So beautiful. I'm seeing questions coming in. I'm just going to put this last slide up, and then I will answer the questions. Just quickly, if you're interested in the one-on-one posture alignment therapy or an individual ergonomics assessment, you are eligible for 10% off as an alternative balance member. Feel free to email me just so I can set you up with those discounts. So my email is there in the chat. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat as well, which is a link to book a 15-minute call if you'd like to discuss anything further with me in terms of workshops for your team, if you work for a company, or if you're an individual and you are interested in some of the services, you can book a 15-minute call and we can talk more. Okay, let me get to the questions, and please keep them coming into the chat so we can talk about it. All right, so we talked about how often we should break for stretch, 30 to 60 minutes, and then make sure we're also sitting and standing. Oh, I answered the sit-stand desk question, even though you didn't ask me about that. For arm circles, yeah. So the recommended protocol for arm circles is 40 circles forward, 40 circles backwards, and about 2 times a day. So again, palm will be face down as you go forward, all right, keeping the shoulder blades squeezed. A great way to do it is on camera or in a mirror, because oftentimes we'll see somebody with like their shoulder up, so try to keep both shoulders down, and then you would turn the palms face back and do 40 to 50 in the backwards direction. So a total of about 80 to 100 repetitions. There is a little bit of body movement happening here, so you can let the body shake a little bit, but more importantly, the shoulder blade squeeze behind you. In terms of the cat-dog stretch, the recommendation would be 10. It takes about a minute to do about 10 repetitions. So you would round and arch and do that 10 times. You can also do that exercise on your hands and knees. You can do it with your hands on the wall. So there's a lot of variations. But again, remember the goal of the cats and dogs stretch is to get that mobility in the pelvis and really get that pelvis moving as much as you can, as well as also some upper body movements happening, but you're going to emphasize the movement of the pelvis. Great questions, Shannon. Beautiful. All right, the chair seems to be perfect except I don't have room between my knees and the chair. Should I use a pillow on my back to push me forward? Great question, Michelle. Is the chair pushing against the back? Like, do you feel pressure right now? Yeah, you.
No, it actually feels fine. I mean, it's just
I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're not having any knee issues, if you're not having any neurological issues going through your legs, that is something that they just want to be mindful that you don't have like direct contact pressure for hours on end. I think if you put the pillow behind you and move you forward, you're going to lose the benefit of your lumbar support and potentially the benefit of your thoracic support. So I would rather you have that lumbar support, thoracic support, as long as you're not getting pressure. A solution could be is if you maybe get a small footstool and you just put your feet slightly in front of you. And then you have that resting on a footstool, something, it needs to be angled towards you. So footstools, they have various types where you have a flat footstool and then you can also angle it, right? So if you've got your feet underneath you, because we're looking for that, remember geometry and ergonomics, so because we were looking for that 90-degree angle on the ankle joint, if your feet are directly underneath you, your footstool is going to be flat. But if your feet are slightly in front of you, your footstool is going to need to be angled towards you slightly, right? So if you want to grab, what you could try today is to grab a yoga block. I'm assuming you have a yoga block in your space. If not, or book something thick that you can put in front of you. And you can have your heels on the ground and just have your toes here. So you can see I've got that 90-degree angle on my ankle joint, right? And I no longer have that pressure on the back of the knee joint because I've got a little bit wider angle in the knee joint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Yep.
There you go.
Thank you.
Problem solved. All right, coming back. Beautiful, Shannon. This is very informative. I can't wait to start this new routine. Beautiful. Of course, yeah. And feel free to email me if you have any other questions, or book a call if you want to talk about any of the services, or just have any more questions. You can book a call. Any other questions?
One, just so I feel like I'm not totally in alignment, like I haven't been, so do I just jump into being in alignment? or will that in itself cause injury to my out of alignedness?
So are you talking about like just thinking about sitting up tall and pulling your head over your shoulders? Yeah, it's a great question. You want to think about it on occasion, but you don't want to hold yourself in that position for 8 hours a day because you will build more tension in the body, which is why I'm such a proponent of the exercises. Exercises.
Right. That makes sense.
Because that's why the arm circles, the chest stretch, because the exercises we know brings the body into different alignment. And these exercises are not like hypertrophy exercises. We're not trying to build muscle mass in your quads, for example. We're not doing deadlifts where we're trying to get a nice bum, right? They're activation exercises. So they're waking up sleepy muscles that haven't been there. So the 4 exercises that I gave you all today, the chest stretch, the arm circles, the cats and dogs, and the overhead extension kind of hit all the different points of the body. We're activating the hip movement. We're activating the lower back, mid back, and upper back with thoracic extension. We're activating the scapular muscles with arm circles, and we're stretching the chest. So I have hundreds of exercises, but those 4 alone is a good way to get started to kind of wake up the sleepy muscles. And then just think about it when you can, but we don't want to be 24/7. I got to get my head back. That will create some tension in the body. So that's why posture therapy exercises is what I'm pushing a lot. And if someone were to do like a one-on-one posture alignment therapy with me, they'll get a 30 to 40-minute routine every single day that they can do to help bring the body back into alignment naturally. And that's really designed for people that are like in low back pain or neck pain. Maybe have seen chiropractors and things like that, and they see progress, but they're not sticking. The body's not staying in that position, and that's because the muscles, either tight muscles are pulling them out of alignment or weak muscles are not holding them into alignment. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. It's really actually fascinating to think about, how it's just really conditioning our body out of maybe not even when we're working, right? Like just thinking about it and getting our muscles so we support, when we work. It's,
we have to train for this. You genuinely have to train for this. To sit at a desk 8 hours a day, you have to train for it. And listen, I'm one of the few ergonomists in the world that really push the exercise stretch piece of it. I wish more would. Everybody else is so concerned on equipment. And it's definitely important. We need to make sure our equipment can support our body throughout the day. But if you don't understand and educate yourself on how important movement and how destructive immobility can be, like you could sit for 3 hours like this and you're like, why is my back hurting? Well, because we weren't designed to sit like that for 3 hours. Body has not evolved fast enough for the way that technology has evolved, right? Technology that has grown exponentially in 50 years, but yet it takes hundreds of years before the body will adapt to it. I don't know if anyone's seen WALL-E, but it's a little bit about that, So yes, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Beautiful.
I put some links in here for everybody. Just want to be conscious of the time here. But if you're looking to join other webinars for alternative balance, we have our more member webinars coming up, and we also have our business series coming up too on June 21st. So that's more of a financial webinar if you want to register for that. And like I said, I am going to put the recording of this in the Facebook group, and I'm also going to send Zeena's presentation and her offer via email to everybody. So we have one more. Oh, we have one more. Thank you, Zeena.
Thank you. Thank you, Zeena. Thank you for participating. Thank you to everybody else. Hopefully you learned something. All I got to say is do your posture exercises, sit in your plumb line posture, get your chair adjusted, and email me if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really cool to learn about.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.